welcome to today's webinar using Marketo Engage to support your 2023 marketing plan. And in today's webinar, I will be your host. I am a Marketo Solutions Architect here at JTF Marketing, and I'm going to walk you through some of the current challenges for marketers and how Marketo can help you support your marketing plans. And of course, many of us starting the year afresh, coming up in January, or some of you working towards different year ends, of course. And as we get up and running for the year, what are some of the challenges looking like? What are we being pressured into doing? Or is ever more with less, right? It's the same old phrase every time. And also we'll look at the importance of reviewing your Marketo instance. So, what's in there? What can we do? What do we need to be thinking about in terms of, how are we effectively using Marketo as a platform? What else can we get it to do for us? Should we be looking at any other solutions as well that integrate with the technology to make sure that we're fully maximizing it? So for those of you just joining, feel free to use the Q&A section for any questions as I go through, or if you've got any specific questions about how Marketo can be best utilized to support your activities, then do let me know. I'll be more than happy to go through those as we go through this presentation. So for those of you new to JTF Marketing, and maybe our email landed in your inbox over the last few weeks and you thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. Let's have a look and see what these people are up to and what they're saying. We've been around for about 7 years now, focused on marketing automation technologies, mainly Marketo, and we work with a range of organizations. So across a spectrum of different organizations that you see on the screen, some logos you might recognize. And ultimately, we're very industry agnostic because we look at it from the perspective of automation as a technology and a way of working that we apply to a business based on its challenges in order to overcome certain challenges that you may have or may face. And of course, they turn into different use cases, right, that we support on. So from technical implementation of new technologies like Marketo through to the professional services element, how do we use it? What does it look like? How do we run the day-to-day from an operations perspective? And importantly, how do we educate your team on how to maximize this technology? Of course, there's a whole raft of other potential solutions that we can provide, from lead nurturing and scoring and whatever other buzzwords you want to throw in there. But again, it all depends on your business. It has to be customized to your business to be successful. So when we start thinking about the challenges of marketers for 2023 specifically, I think we're in a very interesting economic situation. Many of us have been talking about the recession is coming for probably the last, what feels like 2 years, through the pandemic, through the struggles of the pandemic, and now into this global recession that we're in. And for whatever reason, let's not get into the politics of it, we're going to face the budget squeeze as always. As ever, marketing is the first place that gets budget cuts across all of the business units. So again, we've got to be really conscious of that when we're starting to spend money and able to prove what is it we're doing. Of course, comes with less budget, might be less resources. We've seen the great layoffs across a lot of the technology companies, and hopefully those brilliant individuals can find new roles and new places to flourish. But again, how do we cope with not having maybe a marketing automation expert in our team, or even the budget to spend on a marketing partner or an agency to support us through those activities? And some of us may even be forced to reduce the amount of capabilities we have from a technology perspective because of budget, because we can't afford to. So again, how do we choose those? What does it look like? How do we make sure that we have the right tools in place to scale, but obviously the luxuries and the nice tools to have, we have to cut where we can. We've of course got changing consumer behavior. And one of the things that comes up time and time again, especially as I talk to a lot of our prospective customers and existing customers, is the shift away from the office, right? So we've all changed the way we work. We're now comfortable with remote working in most circumstances, and importantly, starting to approach things in different ways. We've also got the end of third-party cookies, which is going to get quite interesting. And I think many of us probably feel quite unprepared for what that might look like and what we may need to do in the future in order to continue to track and engage our audiences. And, I always look at this from the perspective of, I think most people using technology these days aren't that worried about cookies and privacy. And as we know, the famous AI images that went around on social media just before Christmas and over Christmas. Again, what were they doing with the data? How do we understand what we're doing with the data when we give away our face to an application like that? Again, I think these are the impacts that we're going to have to start thinking about. What are we collecting? How are we storing it? How long are we going to store it for? And importantly, what do we then do with it? I think this number 5 is the never-ending cycle, right, of sales and marketing alignment. As pressure is applied from the business in order to keep growth, in order to keep on track, in order to keep afloat in some cases, we will see pressure across the sales team as well as marketing, right? So sales has to hit their targets. They've got to be more effective at forecasting. They've got to be bringing in bigger sales that make it more profitable for the business. And again, how do we look at that? How do we understand that? And how do we make sure that we as a marketing team are aligned with those individuals, supporting them through that sales process? And this kind of comes back to the overarching challenge, I think, for marketing as a whole, right? How do we prove our ROI? How do we show marketing return on investment? For every dollar spent, what do we get back? And this is an endless challenge. And I think wherever you've worked, whatever business you may be moving to, whatever client we work with, we see the same conversations come up time and time again around marketing performance and marketing reporting. There's a really important thing here about language, and we'll come to that a little bit later in the presentation, because I think it will help just visualize how can we talk to the business about what marketing does and how it impacts us from a pipeline perspective. Let's talk about Marketo. So Marketo, probably one of the most expensive tools in the bag when we look at the marketing tech stack. Price per contact, which is always extremely painful. But there's a few ways we can measure the value and effectiveness of Marketo. So the first one, of course, is, are we engaging our audience? Have we got a database that's fully engaged? Should we be engaging them? Are they relevant to be in the database? And should we be doing something to enrich that data? We've also got these efficiencies across the team, right? So not only from a sales perspective, but a marketing perspective. How do we show these are the top performing leads, or how do we engage the sales team to look at the insights that we've been gathering as marketers and present that back to the business in order to say, hey, this is what you've got. And of course, when we think about Marketo and functionality capabilities, it's such a big product, it's such a powerful product, that it really depends on, again, the challenges of your business on how we can apply it. Now, one of the things that we've spent a lot of 2022 working on, and 2021 probably actually during the pandemic, again, was looking at data quality. A lot of people started to look back at the data sets they've got and say, actually, my challenge isn't necessarily constant acquisition. It's actually conversion of the existing database. So again, how do we identify what's good, what's bad, what's quality, what's not? How do we enrich that on an ongoing basis? How do we integrate tools like ZoomInfo, Cognism, wherever other tools that you might be using in order to find prospects and engage with prospects and build up that profile, right? And we always talk about this buzzword in marketing of ABM and ABM marketing. Actually, everything we probably do in a B2B space is ABM anyway, because you're selecting the accounts you want to go after, you're looking at your ICP, you're identifying who you should be going after. And if you're grading in letters, A to F, then why have you got Fs in your database? What are they doing? Are they converting? Is any of them converting? Therefore, should we keep them? So there's lots of conversations we can have around data and targeting and personalization. And of course, that relationship with sales, because if we get better at our focus within Marketo and understanding the data set we've got, actually all the results become much easier, right? We can start to look at conversions. We can start to look at movement through the funnel. And importantly, we can start to build predictability of leads to sales as well. Now, I think one of the questions that I hear time and time again from our customers especially is, how do we just make reporting simple, right? So you've got some examples on the screen here of some custom dashboards that we've created for our customers, integrating multiple areas, right? So not only Marketo activity and engagement, but the data quality and also the conversions, analytics as well. How do we bring it all together into one single pack that we can then present back to the business and say, this is what we've been up to, this is what we've been doing. Of course, there's a piece with marketing automation that's really, really important, which is getting the foundations in place. Now, there's a couple of parts to that which are often overlooked, right? So we talk about email templates a lot, landing page templates, global assets within Marketo, so global forms, global smart lists, marketable lists. So again, how do we take the same assets and keep reusing them? There's of course a couple of other pieces that we'll talk about later on, things like program templates, which are easy to clone and execute. And as we start thinking about some of those challenges, you know, of less people that we're going to have on the ground, how do we make sure that we can then scale the people we have within the business? We can do the basics and then maybe find some budget scrapping around in the bottom of the coffers in order to look at something a bit more complex and something a bit more engaged. So let's look at some tips on optimizing your Marketo instance. So I think I've started to allude to these already. The first tip that we give everybody is look at the database. So again, we talk about cost cuts, we talk about budget cuts. Marketo's price per contact, per functionality. We've got to be really careful about what we contract, especially in times when budget is very light. Again, some of those initiatives that you might want to run in 2023, let's say real-time personalization, let's say attribution, let's have a realistic conversation. Can we really get those in this year? Do we have the time? Do we have the human power and fingers to go and get it done? And also start thinking about that database size. So how can we clean up that database? What are our opportunities? Can we get rid of unsubscribes, hard bounces? Can we refresh the people who've left the company? And again, if you're looking for some ideas, you can use our data management handbook that's on our website, and the link will be in the slides when we share them after this webinar. But again, you can start looking at some of those areas. Preference centers and opt-ins, opt-outs, of course, we're all bored of talking about GDPR. And you know, if we look around Europe, especially, we're starting to see more aggressive attacks on how preferences as well as you know, privacy is controlled. And again, if you're not following any of that, there's been quite a lot of activity over the last few months. Again, there seems to be this attitude towards the bigger players. So if you've got a big database, if you're a well-known brand, you're probably quite aware that you're on the target list, so to say, and at more risk, again, because what have we got? Is the data accurate? How do we make sure it's fresh? How do we keep our preferences fresh even? So how do we keep engaging people to make sure that they are happy receiving our information? And if they're not, how do we make sure that we either get them opted in, get them opted out, and clean up that database? And I know that can be a very daunting thought for a lot of marketers, to reduce the size of your database, but it's not who's got the biggest database wins. It's about quality. It's about getting those conversions. So again, I always talk about conversion of existing acquired data is more important than acquiring more and more and more and more. So new isn't always better. We can then start to look at processes and setup. So how are you using your Marketo instance? How does your team maximize that instance? And one of the biggest things that I have heard over the last 7 years, and I've been around Marketo for about 14 years now, is we didn't get any training. Or, you know, Susan next to me trained me on how to build this program, but I'm not quite sure she really knew what she was doing. But actually, I don't think she had formal training either. So again, getting formalized training, getting mentored into the knowledge that you require in order to run your business through Marketo is really important. And again, we talk about those foundations, right? Templates, global forms, marketable lists. And actually, marketable lists is the one thing we see consistently not used as a global asset. Building that targeting list every time you're building the campaign. But actually, if you think about it, you've got preferences, you've got opt-out, you've got bounces. They should all be filtered out very early on. Again, from a forms perspective, you want one download form, one trial form, one registration form, one contact form, and we can do all the intelligent routing around that as well. We mentioned earlier the program templates piece, which is really cool because, again, this is all about saving time. It's all about doing more with less. And if you want to go back and justify this project with your bosses, tell them it's going to save you a lot of time. So typically, let's say building a webinar program might take you 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, depending on the size of it, the complexity. This kind of scenario, when we're looking at program templates, you might be able to reduce that down to 15, 30 minutes, depending on complexity. And again, we're looking at using tokens across the board. We're looking at having standardized setups, which improves reporting and also gives you better visibility into success as well. And we can talk more about that in a second. We can also look at personalization. So how do we personalize better the data that we have in our database? And just a kind of little red flag here for some of you who may have duplicates in your database. That will impact your ability to personalize, of course, split data across multiple records. That's not going to help us get accurate in our personalization. So if you do have any duplicates in your database, check out our free data hygiene report, and we can then talk to you about how can we fix those data hygiene issues, and importantly, how many duplicates can we get rid of in order to improve your overall data size and data quality. So when we talk about personalization, there's multiple levels in Marketo, and not to teach you to suck eggs, but we've got tokens, we've got dynamic contents, and we've also got velocity scripting. Now, velocity scripting is one of the areas which is probably appearing more and more as some businesses get more advanced with capabilities in Marketo and starting to use third-party data. So maybe you're using, you know, a custom object that has purchase history, and you want to pull that information into an email and say, hey, Susan, I noticed you bought this product. I don't know why Susan is my target name today, but Susan bought a product and she bought it on this date. Can she give us a valuation of how she felt about that service or product? Again, we can get into some of the complexity and the detail there by personalizing using velocity scripting. From a tokens perspective, again, how do we scale those? How do we get them right? So we've obviously got our global tokens, which are from the system. We then might want to get into local tokens, part of the program or part of the program folders. And again, how do we scale those across different areas of the business as well? And I think setting these up for success, you know, one of the ones that we use quite often is using tokens to populate UTMs even. So again, it's not only about personalization, it's about tracking and making sure that we're seeing how things are, you know, coming back to us. Are we tracking success? How do we get that information back in a consistent manner and making sure that we're tracking the campaign, that it's being effective? From a visibility perspective, from a performance perspective, we talk often here at JTF Marketing, and this is probably the most underutilized feature of Marketo, is revenue models in Marketo. A revenue lifecycle modeler, as it often is named. And this is about visualizing your customer journey or your funnel and understanding how many people are in each stage of my buying cycle. Where are they? How can I encourage them? And again, this is where it's really important when we talk about data sets and conversion of existing data. This will really, really help you shine a spotlight on the areas where your data gets stuck. So let's say you've got 500,000 records, but 300,000 of them are sitting in your known database, which means you know who they are, but they're not showing any signs of engagement, or they've been recycled, or they've come back again. Again, what can you do there in order to push them through that buying cycle? What you can start to tie up with revenue model is not only engagement campaigns and nurture campaigns, as well as reporting and visibility of the volume of people each one of those stages, but you can actually start to serve up ads against those channels. So let's say you've got someone who is has an open opportunity, you're currently trying to sell them a product or service. You can use AdBridge with Revenue Modeler to say, anybody who's at my SOW or negotiation stage, you know, promote them case studies from our customers, videos that show how happy our customers are, in order to then convince them that they're in the right place and remind them that they've got to keep coming back and communicating with you. We can also start to personalize communications based on those different stages. So again, if we're promoting new content that we've created, rather than send a nice glossy marketing email, we can send a nice plain text email coming from the account manager or the salesperson saying, hey, I thought this would be of interest to you. This article has just been published. Let me know what you think. Or do you want to jump on the phone? I can walk you through what this download contains or this brochure contains, because it might be something that's useful for you. Again, it all depends on the tactics that you need. And again, we'll help you align with sales in terms of what's really interesting through that buying cycle. Now, we've got a webinar specifically on Revenue Cycle Modeler, so you'll find it in our resources section called Build in Better Visibility Over Your Sales Funnel. It's definitely worth a watch. We get into a bit more detail about how to build it, how it comes together, and importantly, some of the analytics that you can see. Training, I've mentioned probably a dozen times already, but it's probably one of the most important areas when it comes to any platform. People come and go from your business, processes change, best practice evolves. Therefore, it's good to get constant advice and constant education about what else can we do, or how do we use this feature? I often end up talking to our customers about features they've had for the entire contract that they've ever had with Marketo, but they just never spent the time getting to know the feature or functionality and how it can be applied to their business, or whether it can't be applied, right? So maybe your use case that you have for, I don't know, web personalization is going to be different to mine, and therefore it works better or it doesn't work at all. Again, how do we explore that? How do we build that proof of concept to rule it in or out? And that becomes really important, especially as we get close to the renewal of your Marketo contract. And so there's something that we tend to talk a lot about, which is a audit of Marketo, right? So we run audits of Marketo instances to understand where are your opportunities. What would we go and do now if we were in your shoes in order to boost your conversion rates, in order to get more leads, in order to get more visibility, in order to streamline the management of this platform? Because we have to remember that Marketo is a platform, is a technology. The more campaigns and things we build in it, the more maintenance it requires, the more documentation it needs, the better the processes need to be. And that's really, really important. There is another webinar, again, in our resources section. And if you haven't had a poke around in the resources section, there's a ton of webinars in there. There's a ton of free advice in there, actually. Again, go and upskill your team in Marketo Engage and find some more tips of how we think you should be educating your team. There is two ways in which we provide this service. One is online. Our online courses come with dedicated mentoring sessions, which means your team get to work with a certified expert to ask all the questions that they've got, make sure that the knowledge has gone in their head. And we also give them little assignments to make sure that they present back to us and say, hey, I've built this campaign, have I done it right? Or I want you to help me before I hit the big button and send it out to the database because it's the first time I'm running an A/B test, for example. Wherever it might be, again, get that help, get that support that you require. Of course, you can also do dedicated training sessions, so in person or around a specific theme, should you have one. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I hope to speak to you soon.